We'll do a review, Likutei Sichos in Chelek Tezvav, in volume 15, the fourth Sicha for the Parshas Toldos. This is also a Rashi Sicha, in which the Rebbe explains seemingly the pasuk says that Yitzchak says before he wants to bench Yaakov, Esav, he calls in Esav and he says to him, I don't know which day I'm going to die. And Rashi brings down that because he reached 5 years within his mother's age when she died, and so he thought that maybe he will also die then. But Rebbe says, why? The pasuk says, Hineno zakanti. He's basically saying, I've become old. Why do we need to explain why he doesn't know the day of his passing? And the Rebbe is going to explain why we need the name over here, and the Rebbe is going to very interestingly give all the dates to show Abraham's Yitzchak lived 180 next to the 175 of Abraham 5 years later, but Abraham was added years from his original 100 years, Baba Yomim, and Sarah's years, everything matches up so beautifully. The math comes out, as we'll see in the Sikha, how much longer Sarah lived, how much longer Avram lived, and how Yitzchak, thinking that he's going to reach the age, is also associated exactly with the same length as they lived longer than they were supposed to, as the Rebbe will explain in the Sikha. But let's look inside. Aleph. On the words, Yitzchak says to Esav, I don't know the day I'm going to die. In unser Parsha, in our portion. Zogt Rashi says, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcho, Yeshua ben Korcho says, Im magia Adam lepedik habaysof, a person reaches to the chapters of his parents, meaning the time of the parents when they passed away, Yidak chomesh shonim lifneim v'chomesh la'achar needs to worry perhaps 5 years before the parents died and 5 years after the parents died. And then you have to worry. So it turns out the first opportunity to worry for Yitzchak, the Yitzchak Hoya ben Kuf Chov Gimel. At that time, when he says that he wants to give the bracha to Esav, he wants to tell him before he passes away, he was 123 years old. So that matches up because that is 5 years before his mother passed away. Omar, he says, Shemol lepedik imi ani magia. It's the parents, one of the parents. Maybe it's the chapter, the life end of his mother I'm going to reach. Since Vihi Bas Kuf Chov Zayin Mesa, she died when she was 127. Being that he's 123, Vareini ben Heishonim Samuch Lipirko. So it means that I'm 5 years close to the chapter when she passed away. And that's why he says, that's why I don't know the day of my passing. Because maybe it's my mother, Shema Lepedik Imi, who died when she was 127. Shema Lepedik Abba, maybe 5 years of his father. His father died when he was 175. So he doesn't know which chapter to whose passing, but he's worried at the first opportunity, basically at his mother's passing, when he came within 5 years from his mother's passing. That's why he says, I don't know the day that I'm going to die. So you need to understand, why do we need a reason why he says that I don't know when I'm going to die? He says because he's old. Vos Aleph, Vos Zucht Rashi HaHezber. Why is Rashi looking for an explanation Yitzchak gesagt, lo yadaiti yomaisi, why he said, I don't know the day I die. Yitzchak allein zog do frier dem Tag. Yitzchak himself gives the reason before he says, by Yomer hine nozakanti, right here in the pasuk, he says, he's saying to Esav, I have become old. Ich bin alt geworden. Und der Fahr, and he could, therefore, is lo yodaiti, yoimaisi, I don't know when I'm going to die. Base. The other question is, was darf Rashi bring in the nomen from the Bal HaMaimer? Why does Rashi need to bring the name of the author of the statement, Rabbi Shimon Korcho? Was is the nit klor or the nit glati? What is not clear or not smooth in the Pirush, in this interpretation? Was durch der Yediyah, but now that we know, as the Pirush had gesagt, Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcho, we know that he's the one that said it. But as verum klorum verstanding, now it's going to become clear and understood. So what is it? And the Rebbe explains basically that Avraham Yitzchak has just gotten a bracha from the Eibishter and doesn't really fit all of a sudden to be worried about his longevity, about his life when he just got a bracha. So Rashi is looking for other explanation. Base is Dabir in that. So what's the explanation of this? In the Friedrike Sedre state by Borach Elikimis Yitzchak. The previous Sedre in Chayisore, it says that Hashem blessed Yitzchak. Taiched Rashi, so Rashi translates, Nisyare Avram. Avram was worried. Levorach is Yitzchak, to bless Yitzchak, Mipnei Shetzovas Esav Yotzim Mimenu, for he can see, he had the vision that Esav comes out of Yitzchak. He didn't want to bench him. Omar, so Yitzchak, Avram said, Yave Bala Brachas, so let the master of the Brachas Hashem, be Vorachas Hashem Yitabeinu, let him bless whoever he finds favor in his eyes, whoever he wants to bless. Let Hashem bless Yitzchak. So Hashem came and blessed him by Vorech. So the pasuk says, by Vorech Elikimas Yitzchak. So since that's the case, so the question that arises in our verse, since he had the blessing from Hashem himself, blessed Yitzchak. From the Baal HaBrachas, the master of the blessings, is das Zicher Koile Larichas Yomim. That would certainly include longevity, long life. But Yitzchak nicht gedarft übertrachten wegen Yom Moshe, so Yitzchak should not have, not need to worry about the day of dying that in Elta von 123 years while he was only 123 years old. And the proof is, why should he worry? Avram and Sarah, Avram and Sarah, who had a blessing from Hashem, they had longer lives, more than the 123 years. They lived longer, 127 and 175. Why would he worry at the age of 123 when he has just received a blessing from the Eibishter? So the Rebbe is of Rashi, and therefore Rashi says, as Yitzchak Zor got sich genommen davon, that Yitzchak's worry came from the fact, was hat gerecht dem Alter, because he reached the age, was is abgeruckt 5 Jahre von seiner Mutter's Petire, that is moved 5 years from the passing of his mother. So what did he mean mit hine nozakanti? When he said over here, I become old, but gemeint nicht stam Altkeit. It didn't mean just become old. But a bestimmten Alter, he became old, something very specific. Was is verbunden mit Perek Imei, which is connected with the chapter of his mother in the time of his mother's passing. But as kann doch aber werden nicht recht, but now it's going to become difficult. It's become difficult. Wie stimmt oder klar, how does this ruling fit? Bald Yitzchak hat lepoil gelebt 180 Jahre. Since Yitzchak lived for 180 years, which is much longer than the 123, the 5 years less than his mother. Asach maybe 5 years, many more years, which is close to his mother's chapter to her passing, for example, to his mother. So it doesn't fit that a person passes with worry. Rashi. So that's what Rashi says about this father and mother. That there is several ways. If your father the noch so 5 years or after the chapter, the passing of his parents, in Perek Gufa Meintes, when we say the chapter of the parents are passing, it means other Perikim, other Perikom. It means either the time, the chapter when his mother passing, or the chapter of the father. By Yitzchak was had gelebt 180 Jahre, so by Yitzchak, who actually lived 180 years, is lepoil gewender eifel from 5 Jahren noch Perikoviv. So in actuality, he lived 5 years after the chapter of the father. So therefore, it also fits with what happened exactly, and that's why Rashi brings down also either the father and the mother. So he worried before 5 years before the mother passing at the age of 123, and it's not a contradiction that he lived until 180 because that's 5 years after the father's passing. So now in Ois Gimel, the Rebbe is going to ask that since the passing by Perek Avoisov, 123, 5 years next to his mother's passing, before his mother's passing, or 180 after his father's passing, that seems to be the natural way. Person reaches Perek Avoisov, he has to worry. Since, however, Yitzchak got a special bracha from the Eibishter, so why would he expect at 123, or why did he only live to 180? The bracha should have added something in addition to the natural way that things are supposed to take place. That is very interesting. Going to explain that actually those are also by Avraham and Sarah. These years were actually not natural years that they lived, but actually this was extended life for them. So that it is included also in the bracha by Avraham. Let's look inside Gimel. Even after Rashi explains what his interpretation, still the question remains. The bracha was der Eibishter hat gewünscht Yitzchoken. The blessing that Hashem blessed Yitzchok hat doch gewiss gebracht, this for sure brought addition in seine Protachim in the details of his life. Unavade, for sure, if he brought in the details of his life, in Etzemachayim Gufa, in his actual, the essence of his life itself, I saw in Arichis Yom, he must have brought an addition in the long days. More than he was supposed to live because of nature. The Greicht Mensch dem Eltern. So even if in the order, normal order, a person reaches the age from the Yorum Samuch Lepere so that is close to the chapter to this passing of his parents, this is the normal way, expectation, that within the 5 years before or after his parents passed away, so the blessing that Hashem blessed Yitzchak it may certainly has added mer v'ditzol yorn from Perek Avosov. It added more than the chapter, the time of the passing of the parents. So we have the question like this. Number one, how come he only lived 185 years more? He should have lived more than that. Why did he only live for 180 years? Since this amount of years, 180, is only something which comes by nature. Nature within 5 years. And this is 5 years after his father. Wo ist der Zugab von Arichas Yomim, wo das darf kommen mit Tzadrichas Hashem? So where is the addition of longer days that needs to come because of the blessing of Hashem? And number two, also, this is why actually did he only live 180 years more on. And the number two, why did he worry about the age of 123 when he just got a bracha? Why should the natural way affect him? Should live longer. The Zelba base, the Zelba came and fragen. Of them, we can ask the same thing on the fact was zu 123 Jahre hat schon Yitzchak gesagt when he was 123 years. Yitzchak already said lo yodaiti yoimoisi that he doesn't know the day that he's passing, that he's dying. Baldos is der Schum Jorn, was hat am wenigsten gedacht leben. Since 123 seems to be, that is the minimal amount of years that he needs to live, even according to the natural way. Also according to the normal order in nature. That would be 5 years less than the shortest, the earliest from the chapters of his parents, from the passing of one of his parents. So, und die Bracha hat doch sicher etwas zugegeben zu Adiyon. And the blessing that Yitzchak got, for sure, added something to those years. Ein Verwas hat zu 123 years. So how come when he was 120 years, schon gesagt, said, Lo yodaiti yomoisi, I don't know the day that I'm passing. He should have expected that the blessing is going to accomplish. So we have two questions. Number one, why did he only live 180 and not more than the natural way? And why was he at the 123 thinking that he came to the chapter of his mother when he got a special blessing, so he should get something more? And he took the minimal amount for himself. The Rebbe is going to explain now that actually Avram's years and Sarah's years were also longer because of a blessing. Let's see inside. Dalet. That read in the explanation, and it'll be amazing to see how all the math works out. Side with regards to Yitzchak as it relates to Avram and also to his mother Sarah. Shas Avram is alt given knappe 100 Jahre when Avram was just about 100 years. When Sarah knappe 90 Jahre, and Sarah she was about 90 years. At that point, they were not just elderly, they came with in their days. They had already entered all their days. That was destined for them. Those was bepoil. So in other words, that they've reached their age where they're supposed to live. This is based on the translation of the Zohar. Und those was bepoil haben sie gelebt länger. And the fact that they lived longer is as given mitzad der Broche was der Eberster hat sie gebenched. That was because of the blessing. Hashem blessed them, so they lived longer than the Boim Bayom. So this it turns out as mitzad teva under bracha von Eibishten, that when you look naturally without the blessing of the Hashem, hat Yitzchak zu 105 Jahren schon dem Greich den höchsten Alter, wie das ist mitzad Perek HaVeiser. So he actually reached, when he turned 105, to the latest, the highest age, the greatest age that he could be from his father's chapter, because his father was supposed to live for 100 years. And when Yitzchak reaches 105, he's 5 years after the time of his father, because that he was naturally supposed to live. Mit 5 Jahr mehr wie die 100 Jahre seinen bestimmt with 5 years more than the designated 100 years that were set up for Avram. On the bracha, that would be without the bracha. Farzai Potter, that were designated for his father. If the bracha didn't come in, and then he lived for 175 years. But the boy by Yomi was already at the age of 100. But in Perek Avosov main the Yorn was einen Zeir Perek. This means their chapter means when they actually naturally time has become, but not when they actually died. But the Perek, that was the time. There was not the bracha from Bala Brachas, not the blessing from the master, the blessing who makes it longer. So it turns out, Isai aliba de emes, Isai lifidaita shel Yitzchak. So both according to the truth and also in Yitzchak's view, or that Eber's bracha zeir feel zugegeben to Yitzchak's yon. This blessing added a lot to the years of Yitzchak. Und dieselbe soll Jorn, was der Eberstens bracha, hat zugegeben sein Vater. The same amount of years that the blessing gave his father, how much more years than 100 did Avram live? Bracha, Baba Yom Deibishtem blessed him. He lived to another 75 years till he was 175. So Yitzchak, who was supposed to live 105 years, he lived 180 because 105 was the maximum. 5 years after his father's time, which was 100, and he had 75, that would be 180. The Poilot Yitzchak gelebt 180 Jahre. Und in them had the bracha gehabt, this the bracha added 75 Jahre, 75 years of the 105 Jahre on the 105 years was wollte am höchsten der Gerecht mit Seder which would be the highest maximum that he would have reached in the ordinary way. So he actually got a blessing of 75 years. Mit 5 Jahren mehr von seinen Vaters bestimmte 100 Jahre. That is got 5 years more than his father's 100 year. So he would add 105, and this would be another 75 because of the bracha on top of that 5 years, which would make him 180. Und das ist Punkt der selber Schum Jordan. That's exactly the amount of years was the bracha zugegeben sein Vater Avram. That added to his father Avram's bracha. Was hat gelebt 175 Jahre. He lived 175 years. Mit 70 Finef, with 75, 75 Jahre, mehr von die bestimmte 100 genau, more than the designated 100 as before. So basically, in reality, Abraham got a bracha, he lived 75 years more than the 100 years. Yitzchak, who was supposed to live maximum 5 years more than his father, which would be 105, got a bracha for an extra 75 years, and he lived when he was 180. And that was also Yitzchak's mind when he thought by the age of 123. Maybe they were 5 years less than the chapter of his mother. Is the cheshbon? Was that the same cheshbon? His mother had to live at 90. And then she lived till 127. That is 37 years more than naturally. The bracha hat ihm schon mäßig gewähnt, dieselbe Zoll Jorn, wie die bracha zugegeben sein Mutter. That blessing already, when he reached the level of 123 years old, he already had the blessing that it was given, the blessing that for his mother, the 37 years. Soros bestimmte Jahre seinen gewähnt 90. She designated year were 90. Und durch der Bracha hat sie gelebt 120 Jahr. Through the blessing, she lived 127. So that means 37 Jahre mehr. So he would think that he would live. Und under bracha. So without the bracha, he thought he would live blois 85 Jahre. 85 Jahre. 85 years he thought he would live. Because his mother's years are 90. And he maybe the minimum is 5 years would be 85. Mit 5 Jahre weniger wie seine Mutter, 5 years less than his mother. Und Punkt, wie zu seiner Mutter hat euch ihm the bracha zugegeben, just like his mother, the blessing added to him noch 37 Jahre. So he had another 37 years. Hat der Erfahrung gegeben, durch sein noch 122 Jahre. So after 122 years, he didn't worry up till he was 120 years. So 123 years, when he turned 123, so now he's already got the blessing, and his 5 years to his mother's the Pirkei when she was originally supposed to designated years was 90 years, and therefore he started to work. Now, this is all that we're saying that Yitzchak was supposed to live 80. Yitzchak lived 175, which is a blessing of extra 75 years, which is the blessing of Yitzchak as well. But the truth is that it seems like that he was supposed to, Abraham was supposed to live not 175, he was supposed to live 180 years. Shem took him away 5 years earlier, so it turns out that Yitzchak did not live 5 years longer than his father. Hey, as is aber noch als do a Schwierigkeit, there still remains a difficulty. Rashi schreibt früher. Rashi writes earlier, as Avram is nifte geworden 5 Jahre vor der Zeit, Hashem, that Avram passed 5 years before the time, Tzadem obersten zweite bracha to Avram. Hashem gave him another bracha to Avram. He said to him, Tove b'seva teva. You will come in a good old age, which means that you're not going to see your grandson Esau turning away from the right path. So Hashem took him away 5 years earlier. So we shouldn't see how Esau is going out into the bad ways. Since Abraham had to live because the first bracha, 180 or 180 years, so it turns out, as Yitzchak was at gehad the bracha, Yitzchak also got the blessing, und zusammen mit den 5 Jahren, mehr from Pergav, and together with the blessing, he has to live another 5 years than his father's chapter. Hat gedacht leben 185 Jahre, 185 years, und nicht bloß 180, not just 180. Und dem Entfer of them is Rashi Merames, and the answer in this Rashi hints in the zugegebenen Inyan, when Rashi adds this subject, the name Omar Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha. And here we'll see that the 5 years that Yitzchak Taka didn't live was because he looked at Esau, and Esau was a Rasha, even not knowingly. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha says, long life you get when you don't look in the face of a Rasha. Let's look inside. In Gemara, Werder erzählt wegen Atzol Tanoim, the Gemara relates by several Tanoim, by welchem had gefragt, by whom they were asked, how did you have a long life? What did you do to get life? Each one of them gave several things. In welchem that is given besonders abgehit, in which they were particularly especially careful. Was zu lieb sei hat given, because of them he merited tzarichas yom and long life. Selbe shaile b'mer achter yomin. The same question was also asked. B'mer achter yom, how did you live long? Hat man euch gefragt by Yeshua ben Korcha. They asked it also by Yeshua ben Korcha. Und hat geantwortet, and he answered, I've never looked at the face, at the image of an evil person. That is the one thing that let him live long. Hat seine Riches Yomim verbunden. The long days, he tied it, lois mit der einzige Zehire, to just one being careful. Hat sich allemal gehit, he was always careful, von einzugucken in dem Gestalt von another Russia, to gaze on the image of a person who's evil. Never looked at an evil person. Zetman therefore. So what do we see? His view. As Rabbi Yeshua ben Korcha halt, that he's of the opinion. This being careful, not to look in the face of an evil person, is shokul keneged kamen yonim. That is equal, corresponds to many matters. Was bringing to arichas yomim, which bring person to long life. Umiklal hein ata shemei alav. And from the fact that this brings long life, you can understand if you do look in the face of a Rasha, then you have shortened life. When you look at the face of a person who's a Rasha, he says, that causes a diminishing of this long life. Now, it fits, it's okay that Yitzchak only lived 180 years. He did not withhold from looking in the image of Esau. Although Yaakov, Yitzchak didn't know that there was an Esau, but that looking at him caused him, as from the 185 years, the 185 years was that he should have lived, that should take away from the close to the Perek Aviv Finef Yor. It took down the 5 years that he was supposed to be next to his father. And the Birchas Hashem at Oivgeton, and the blessing of Hashem did accomplish just like the Perek of his father. His father lived 75 more years. So he also only lived 75 more years, but he didn't live the extra 5 years that you get on top of that. Somoch leperik. He only lived exactly. So from 105, he went to 180 versus to 185. But in Pirush Rashi's Rashi's commentary, there's also the wine of Torah. Those was Yitzchak at Meire gehat. This that Yitzchak was afraid. Azayne Yorn vel Zaymet Finif Yor Veniker from Perek Imei, that his years will be 5 years less than his mother's chapter when she passed away. The Niedrigster Eufen is Seder Hateva, which is the lowest. Why was Esav? Why was Yitzchak worried that he's going to get the worst? The very first time the Perek Imei, that's what he's going to come to him. That comes from the level of Gevura. So for himself, Yitzchak applied the level of Gevura, worrying that he's going to get the least. The Rebbe is going to explain, but with others, he gave the level of Chesed. The Nitzgam said that Nochmer, euch in Perek Imei, hat gerechnet bloß die 127 Jahre, was Sorot gelebt bepoyel, he only counted the 127 years that she lived, nicht geguckt, if them was is beemes, given Basher zu leben länger. He could have looked at, she should have even maybe lived longer, it was only because Rashi brings down, because of this, she heard the news of the binding of Yitzchak, so her soul left her. Shama flew away. So it means that she could have even lived longer also because of the bracha, and yet he took the least of what she actually lived. Is that Tama Pnimidefun? What's the inner reason? Yitzchak is b'madrigosir kavah gvura. The level of Yitzchak, he is the line of stringency. The farot that get cooked with alle inyonim. Therefore, he's looked, and his outlook on all matters was he measured everything by the measure of strictness, of restriction. Das ist gewesen Yitzchok's Anhorige nur in Sheiches zu sich. That was his conduct as it applies to himself. Shas hat aber gebencht that zweiten, but when he was benching, blessing someone else, is ein Bruche gewesen von höchsten Eufen. His blessing was on the highest level from Hepech Hagvura Tzimtzum, opposite of any stringency or limitation. Ziot Koilul given that included Saidin Yonim from Shamayim, both matters of the heavens, Saidin Yonim from Oretz, and matters from the earth. And say Gufa in them itself, Itala Shamayim and Mishmane Oretz. The dew of the heavens, the fat of the land, Azalcha Brochas, was ein Egresser Euch von Birchas Yaakov Lebonov. Such blessings that are greater also than the blessing that Yaakov gave to his son, from Birchas Moshe Yisrael, that Moshe gave to the Yid. He gave him Saim Neshmayim and Saim Shmane Oretz, which is even greater than the brachos of Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Rebbe brings down over here from the Siddur Shalat Kiyas. This is a lesson in the service of every Jew. Was jeder Eid is Yitzchak, was jeder Eid is in Yitzchak einer von seinen Office. Every Yid, Yitzchak is one of our fathers. And then how the father von seinen Yonim, when he gets some of Yitzchak's matters. Eid, wenn steht, afili in an Hoge von Kavak Vura, even if he's in a conduct of the line of stringency. When the Rebbe is a macht and therefore he's strict, that needs to be on your own, for yourself, your stringency. Das kommt aber zur zweiten Iden. But when you come and when you deal with another Yid, you have to conduct yourself in the line of kindness. To relate to him in the measure of good, to give him the flow of goodness in a wide hand, without any restrictions or limitation. Bis to the hechster most, to the highest, to the greatest measure, the dew of the heavens and from the fat of the land. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Toldos, Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach, Tavshin Chav Ches.